Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Fairhurst from the European Tourism Association. We are just waiting for various attendees to join, so we will start the webinar in about 2 minutes or so. Meanwhile, what I'll do is ask my colleague Jorge just to share the Glasgow Declaration that's on the One Planet website. So for those of you who've not had a chance to look, we'll just do a screen share of that now. Over to you, Jorge.
Can you see the declaration?
Not yet, no.
If
Okay, something's loading up now. Sorry, I think there's probably a delay in the system.
doesn't pop up.
No. Here we go. All right, everyone. So we're waiting for our colleague Jeremy Smith to join as well. So what I'm going to do is just give a general introduction of the purpose of today's meeting, and then what I'll do is I'll ask Jorge to scroll up the page in due course so we can get to the 5 elements of the Glasgow Declaration lower down. But the reason why we're having today's event is that ETOA is a launch partner of the Glasgow Declaration and a signatory. And one of the striking things about climate action and tourism is the need to build consensus. We're not like other industries. We have a huge number of micro and SMEs, and it's not easy for smaller companies to find the resources to find the tools that they need in order to make the transition to lower carbon activity. So we're very supportive of any effort that is building a collaborative approach to putting tools, schools, and in fact, building rules and frameworks that are going to support this very micro enterprise dominated industry. We're not like consumer products. You know, there isn't really a company like Unilever, which is a big global conglomerate that has got the advanced climate action plans in our sector. There are a lot of carbon heavy elements to the travel and tourism sector for obvious reasons. There's a lot of dependence on carbon fossil fueled travel, particularly for long distance aviation. So we've got our challenges, and we've also got very aggressive climate targets. By 2030, the EU is intending to be at 55% below 1990 levels. Now, the EU hit its 2020 targets. In fact, it exceeded them. But international aviation is within scope of the targets. It's very likely that the legislative framework will develop, as will the fiscal framework. So what we're doing, Jeremy, I can see, is just joining us, incidentally. So someone who actually knows a lot more about the Glasgow Declaration will be able to speak shortly. So Jorge, if you could be ready to switch Jeremy into being a presenter, then he will be able to take over. But in summary, the reason why we're involved in the Glasgow Declaration is we think it does not make sense to make climate action a branded activity. This is not about us saying, we've got the answers. This is about the industry coming together with the private sector saying, we think these are the 5 key elements that you should incorporate in a climate action plan, whether you're a small business, whether you're a DMO, whatever size of organization you are, these are the 5 elements you will need in order to make progress. The people who are with us today know in detail about the Glasgow Declaration. Also, the regional dimension, so Christina Nunez from NECSTouR is here to help us understand how in practice does the structural support intended to help transition, how does that work? How might that work? It's not yet written. There's a lot still to be discussed, and there is a huge opportunity for smart public-private collaboration. And the regional network that NECSTouR represents is an exemplar of good public-private collaboration, and I think her perspectives are going to help that discussion. Nout is here as representing our new sustainability partner, Travellife for tour operators. He's been a pioneer in this world, at least 20 years of experience helping industry transition into more sustainable practice, and he's going to say a little bit more about how in practice we can support businesses throughout the ecosystem to transition. So I'm going to ask Jeremy if he can hear me, and then we can transfer to him for the introductory session. So Jeremy, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Tim. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much for your patience trying to get online. I know this platform is not straightforward.
I promise you, it wasn't my patience, it was your patience. I was the one having to fix things. It's that, the world of too many different versions of things to use to talk on screens.
Yes, exactly. And maybe one of the areas of collaboration is harmonizing online platforms for webinars so we can all make our lives easier. But Jeremy, over to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks. I'm going to do the screen share, so I hope do someone shout if it doesn't work in about 5 seconds. Is that up and running? You can see a big orange screen?
No big orange yet.
Okay. That was my title screen. It's just, maybe I've got it wrong. It says share screen. I press the share screen button, take the thing, but it's not letting me share screen. I can talk. It's not a problem. We don't really need it.
We can, if it's useful, Jeremy, we can, Jorge's got the website of the Glasgow Declaration up. So
yeah, just use that. That's more than useful, because most of what I'm going to take, apart from a quick introduction to the Tourism Declares, after that I was just going to very much talk about the Glasgow Declaration. So if you share that with people.
We can see your screen.
Sorry?
We can see your screen.
Okay, how funny. I can see the nice orange thing then. Yeah?
So we're now
collaborating on
tourism declaration screen. Yeah.
Oh, it's a bit slow. Okay. I'll start talking. I've only got 3 or 4 slides. Hopefully they'll match up with where we are, and we'll get on with it. So I'm here to just introduce you to the process of collaboration that has been growing and developing over the last almost 2 years now, since we came together as the Tourism Declares initiative and connected with Tim and many others, and what brought us to the point of the Glasgow Declaration that was made public last week and will be launched officially at COP26, the climate conference in Glasgow at the beginning of November. Very quick background to Tourism Declares. We launched in January 2020 as a free industry initiative designing to bring together all parts of our industry, from destinations to businesses, to large businesses, to small businesses, to consultants, to academia, around a common framework for tourism action, reflecting and respecting the fact that everyone is at a different place in their journey and everyone's business is different. And so we can't just give you a 30-page PDF saying that's climate, move on. We now have 325 plus members, plus because we get more most days, all sharing the same 5 commitments that everyone who has joined Tourism Declares has made, and those are to acknowledge that we're in a climate emergency and must reflect our actions to treat something as an emergency, to publish a climate action plan for what you will do within 12 months of declaring. It's all very well to say you get it, you've really got to set out a plan for how you're going to do so. To make sure that that plan is aligned with science. We know increasingly that we need to cut global emissions in half by 2030. So what does that look like for a tour operator, for a destination, for inbound, outbound, hotels, chains, for each one of us, depending on who we are, what we're already doing, what our opportunities are, it's different. But the overarching framework remains the same. And then we need to commit to collaborate, to share challenges and best practice, and to work together, and then to advocate, to build our voice together, to say that we understand that this is the way we must work, and we speak as one. We have an increasingly industry-wide representation. Pretty well every part of the travel industry's private sector is represented, an increasing number of members, a great deal coming from Europe. Visit Scotland was the first national tourism organisation to join. Visit Valencia, West Sweden, NECSTouR, ETOA, GSTC, Future of Tourism, Green Key. I could go on. It's a significant growth. Over the last few months, starting in March, we've been working in collaboration with the UNWTO, the United Nations Environment Programme, Visit Scotland and the Travel Foundation to develop the Glasgow Declaration. You go to COP with declarations. You come together with a signed, not an affidavit, with a signed way of saying, this is us, we're here together, and this is how we bring ourselves together. Something to gather around. It's a short declaration. There's a lot of long declarations out there. This one's about 800 words long. It covers 2 pages. It's a blog in essence, and it commits us to very much the same framework that is the Tourism Declares framework, to publish climate action plans aligned with science. But whereas the Tourism Declares was deliberately light, we were starting from the beginning when no one was even talking about climate action plans. So we needed to sort of surface that and learn from one another. The Glasgow Declaration goes into greater detail. It lives now on the One Planet Network's website. That is where, in a few days' time, people will be able to go and commit themselves as signatories. You can read that declaration there, get inside it, start seeing how it relates to your business, your destination. The single shared commitment is, as it was with Tourism Declares, that shared commitment to unite all stakeholders in transforming tourism to deliver effective climate action. And to say that we support that global commitment that is beyond and includes our industry to at least halve global emissions by 2030. And then beyond that, that isn't the end goal. That is the necessary urgent acceleration to give us the chance of reaching net zero as fast as possible at the absolute latest date, 2050. And the earlier we reduce, the earlier we get there, the less emissions we put into the air in the first place, making it easier to get there and causing less harm. And we do this by consistently aligning with the latest science to ensure that we have the best chance possible of keeping global warming no more than 1.5 above pre-industrial levels. As Tim alluded to in his introduction, from talking with all these different organisations, from seeing the climate action plans that have been published by members of Tourism Declares, by talking with UNEP, with UNWTO, with all manner, about 35 organisations fed into this, we ended up drilling down to 5 key pathways that all plans should include. The first one is measure. Most of us struggle enormously with the concept of measurement. I'm not going to go into a great deal here about it because it really would take multiple webinars just to deal with measurement. But we need to come together to work out how, if I'm a hotel and you're a tour operator and I'm a destination, how do we measure our different forms of business in such a way that the fact that we collaborate with one another and rely on each other can be coordinated, and we can align our measurements, understand our baselines, see where we're going and benchmark progress. Once we have an idea of measurement, this is how we can begin to focus our decarbonisation strategies. How can we reduce the amount of emissions we're causing, eventually removing them altogether? By measuring, by understanding what is impactful, what is the best way to invest our money. We don't virtue signal and just do things that look great on the roof, but aren't necessarily having a massive impact. The third is regeneration. It's not enough for tourism just to decarbonise. We have a huge opportunity because of who we are, because of the fact that we connect to the world to beautiful, fragile places, to ecosystems that should be flourishing, and that we can finance and support both the connection of human beings with the natural world and ways to then ensure its longevity through financing it. We can regenerate, and obviously in the context of COVID, we can regenerate our industry, regenerate the communities that we rely on and connect people to, and regenerate the natural world. So if those are the three things that we will do, measure, decarbonise, regenerate, the last two very much are the how. And the how do we do this? We do this, as Tim said, this isn't a brand thing, this isn't a competitive advantage. No one wins unless we all win in the end. We all win or we all lose. So we come together to collaborate. We have to share best practice, remove the knowledge from behind the firewalls and say, this is what we're doing, it works, or this is what we're struggling with, it doesn't. That way we move faster together and reach where we need to get to. And finally, it has to be financed. We can't just talk about this and then leave it to well-meaning volunteers, to be honest, like Tourism Declares, who don't have any investment behind us to do what we can. We need to ensure this financial underpinning that means that we can do this fast, at scale, and adapted to the different circumstances that we will find ourselves in. I'm not going to go through the text of all of the different pathways. It's all there on the website. We can talk about it at length in conversation in a minute. Only other couple of things I was going to add is that there's not just a declaration. There are also 52 recommended actions being published in the next few weeks, very much aligned with policy, showing which ones they're most useful for: government, international organisations, financial, civil society, and then all categorised by the different pathways. And then just to take a quick step backwards, earlier on this year, we also collaborated with UNWTO and the Adventure Travel Trade Association and the two universities from the US, San Francisco State and Texas A&M, on the first ever global survey of climate action in tourism. We need to get an idea of where we are to understand the knowledge gaps, to understand what skills are necessary and how we can accelerate and move forward. We got about 1,300 full responses, and that's full responses to questionnaires with over 50 detailed questions in them. This wasn't a sort of, tick, tick, tick. It was a detailed exercise. And that means it's taking us time to really process the learnings. We will have the first reports of that ready for COP by November. But the key early findings straight away is that there's one question which asks people in an open form, tell us what the impacts are on your business. And I think if you did a comparative word count, there are more words put into that one question than the answers to the other 49. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of words of hotels, tour operators, destinations describing the almost always negative impacts that climate change is having on their businesses, adjusting their seasons, making it more expensive to run their businesses, making guests more concerned to come, etc., etc., etc. This isn't NGOs and activists warning people of what might happen. This is businesses describing what they are seeing on their daily round. And then the two things that we see, lots of people are doing things, but there's very little understanding and coordination around measurement. And that is why it's such a key pathway. And even more so, there's very little understanding and action around adaptation. Because while we need to do everything we can to reduce, to decarbonise and to regenerate, we also know, all of us have seen what happened in the summer this year across Europe. It's already here, and we need to adapt towards the impacts of climate change now. And how much people are adapting their businesses is remarkably limited, and that is a situation that we need to address. What are we going to do about the warming that is already happening and that will continue to happen because of the emissions that have already been caused? Last slide. The Tourism Declares initiative, the community, is there to align and support our fragmented sector. On top of what I've mentioned, there were two methodologies coming out. One is a net zero methodology for accommodation providers, published by Greenview steering group of us, WTTC, the Pacific Asia Travellife Alliance, and Sustainable Hospitality Association, and one for tour operators, a science-based targets methodology developed by Intrepid, the only tour operator with an accredited science-based target. Both of these are open source. They're going to be there, published in the next few weeks to be shared and developed and improved. We have a destination expert working group bringing together mostly European, but not entirely, destinations from around the world, real front runners to share ideas, and we're working to develop those measurement methodologies for destinations. Out of the results of the survey, we're putting together best practice guidance. What are the examples from around the world of destinations, tour operators, and accommodation providers delivering on climate? We are doing webinars and workshops like this. And finally, every person, every company that joins Tourism Declares is part of our community, part of the platform where they can connect to other members, read the plans of others, share and understand, how we get there together as fast as possible. Okay, thank you very much.
Jeremy, thank you, and thanks for bearing with us among the technical difficulties. And just to echo what Jeremy said in terms of sharing and outreach, this is all about open source, who's got the good ideas. They're absolutely open to collaboration, and over the next month or two, there will be a lot more material that we and others will share along those lines. And it is very much a participatory model. This isn't a top-down, this is what you must do. This is very much a bottom-up, here's what we need to do, how can we help each other? With that, Christina, declarations are great, but we do need delivery. And certainly now delivery needs financial support. Public sector does have some scope for investment, not a lot. The DMO community is financially stressed at the moment. A lot of the normal revenues that would have come over the last 2 years have been absent. So the public sector is not in a strong place. However, at a strategic structural level, the European Union has made big commitments both to climate and recovery funding. I'm not going to ask you to focus only on the finance, but you do have some useful insight there. Perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about NECSTouR, but then go on to how you think some of these declarations could end up being incorporated in funding and in joined up strategy across regions and member states within the EU. Over to you, Christina.
Thanks very much, Tim, and thanks to Jeremy also for the interesting presentation. Yes, at NECSTouR, we are partners with the ETOA into the European Tourism Manifesto Alliance, and we've been the ones very much pushing in this advocacy effort for tourism to be fully integrated and visible in the recovery plans, both of countries, regions, and also those European programs that are managed directly by the European institutions in Brussels. And we've been doing this already since earlier, before the crisis, calling for this specific attention to tourism to be in the MFF, the European budget, as directly as possible, in a way that both the Green Deal and the digital age targets could be achieved, but also benefit the visitor economy. So all the SMEs, all this value chain at destination level that we call the capillarity of the ecosystem. So we knew before the crisis that the Green Deal would become a necessary reality and that we had to be prepared for this transformation that this entitles. And this is because of two reasons. Why? One is that we know that our model won't be competitive anymore with or without crisis, but obviously we are in the middle of the crisis, and we know we won't be able to operate as we used to do it, so we need to adapt. And secondly, because of the Fit for 55 package, the whole regulatory and policy measures package, putting the EU on track for the 55% reduction of carbon emissions by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050. It's nothing. So if your business is based in the EU, you will need to comply with this regulation. So we already know it also, because we were working on the nearly zero energy buildings and the nearly zero energy hotels. We have some projects about this. So we knew we had to be prepared, and we know that finance is needed as much as a plan on how to invest and with whom to invest. So for us, the Glasgow Declaration sets the pathway specifically for our sector, and we believe it's very important to subscribe, because we need, in our opinion, the political commitment for them working at technical level. And that's why we are subscribing on NECSTouR and encouraging our regions to do it as well. because we already declare also, you say, the climate emergency following Visit Scotland, who's a member of us inspiring other national and regional DMOs, and with the help of Jeremy and other partners, we're working on what will be our climate action plan. And we need to bring together good practices. We need to structure all these, and we need to capitalize. We know there is a lot going on, and that we don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheels, but we need to structure these and capitalize the success. So what we've been doing these years is trying to break this tradition of no regional tourism, nor tourism companies involved in EU, and turning this into an opportunity for interregional cooperation. So acknowledging, participating, mainstreaming EU policies connected to tourism, and yes, building projects co-financed by EU programs. In this sense, the way we do it, this is connect the regional tourism governance at 3 levels. That's how we do it between regions, private sectors, associations, expert researchers. So how does a tourism strategy connect to sustainable development? Which kind of policies, projects, products? So in a way we can inspire and learn from each other, benchmark and cooperate, so build successful projects and capitalize those. And obviously, how did you manage a neighbor region to get co-finance from the EU to support these projects? We connect also with Europe. We know that in some countries there is a strong regional competence for tourism, but we don't participate necessarily into the decision-making process. But when the crisis arrives, okay, we have the state aids that are there to support the sector, but there is also the regional budget, which is mobilized. So I come from a region that has invested 58 million euros on direct liquidity injected into the sector since the beginning of the pandemic, plus recovery campaigns. You might say that's not enough. We keep fighting for more. So we need this dialogue with Europe as much as we need it with the member states. So the economy ministry and the economy regional department need to talk to each other as much as talk to the union. And we say also you connect to yourselves. Why we say that? Because we believe it's very important to have this holistic approach. So tourism to be connected at regional level with mobility, with culture, with environment, with business innovation. And we say you become the best friend of the managing authority of the EU funds. But what does it mean? Well, the managing authority is the one who has the key to the money. And this is both for the next generation EU funds, but also for the so-called cohesion funds. We're talking about 92 billion euro, and you need to speak the language of the managing authority and make them understand that it's strategically and financially a good decision to invest in a better tourism recovery, because you will need to develop and test this business model, which will drive recovery of all the sectors connected, and because of the mutual dependence and multiplier effects. For this, you need to be able to propose projects which are integrated into the plans and which will need to be implemented with or without funding, because there's no choice anymore. We're talking about the 7 flagships of the Next Generation EU that you're familiar with. We know that 30% of every national recovery and resilience plan needs to go to the climate impact and digitalization. In Spain, for example, we know that there's going to be 114,000 million directly from the recovery and resilience facility, so out from this 750 billion. We know 37% of this money will go to the green transition and 33% to the digital transition. And we know that there is also specific policy measures. There are also some policy measures in around 11 countries we heard, and that is going to be dealing with digitalization and greening. And there is at national level a sustainable development plan it's going to be channeled by the regions. So this is shorter term money for the next 2 years. But we have the whole cohesion policy package, which is longer term, and it's very, very important that tourism is connected to it. There are, I don't want to bother you with all these cohesion instruments, but there are 5 key objectives, and the Glasgow Declaration pathways fit into all of them. So it should be possible, it should be eligible. I'm talking about the more competitive and smarter Europe, the greener Europe, the more connected Europe, the more social Europe, where tourism is directly eligible, and the Europe closer to citizens. But what happens is that, you know, there are rules, obviously. There is this so-called thematic concentration. So depending on your regional GDP, you are considered more developed or less, or in transition region. So this means that you need to allocate 85% of your regional development fund to the more competitive Europe and smarter Europe. So you need to invest in research and innovation. It's not that you can do whatever you want with the money. So tourism-related investment need to reply to this. And we've been working on this narrative to translate what this means into a reality of a tourism investment, which is going to benefit directly to the beneficiaries should be the tourism stakeholders, and these business models we need to transform. So for this, we need the industry on our side. We need to trigger these partnerships. We need to be ready with the sector and with the authorities. We need to know how much money do you need, but also how you need to be invested, which are the mechanism for effective delivery of the projects. So we need the plan, and then we'll get the money. But in order to this, we need to connect tourism to these political priorities. Otherwise, there's not going to be money if there is a plan. So there are some nuances. I would like to finish with a couple of examples, because we've been discussing a lot with DG Regio, so the Director General at European Commission dealing with regional policy and reforms. We've been told, well, regional economies too much depending on tourism should diversify. This means you invest somewhere else, in other words. So our message is, well, when there is a regional GDP 20% directly depending from tourism, this means that it has been a source of economic growth and jobs for decades. So yes, there is a need to reform, there is a need to go into a sustainable development transition, more competitiveness, more digital, yes. But this means we need to properly invest in these reforms and in these new business models that we need to build, we need to test, we need to make sure it works, because it requires direct investment into this ecosystem to transform it so that the whole economy will recover in a better way. We really believe that by no means the Green Deal targets will make possible if the tourism industry, the whole visitor economy is not properly involved and support. We need to be proactive from our side as well. And in this narrative we were discussing with these managing authorities, we were giving some examples. For example, you have the Paris region, Catalonia region, who are strong urban, cultural MICE destinations, entirely depending from international arrivals. So could we blame those ecosystems for not being resilient? We were using 0 EU funds to support the sector because they were more developed, this thematic concentration I was mentioning. And the FEDER, the Regional Development Fund, would not allow them to invest in tourism in the past. On the other hand, you have a region like Andalusia, who's considered in transition, with millions of investments in regional development funds in tourism. But for a reason, this Mediterranean destination are suffering less because of partly compensated with domestic markets. So this means we got different speeds of recovery and transition, those also who have already a mindset and start working on it, and those who need to completely reconvert the business model and destination. So in our opinion, investment is required to both in a coordinated way, so that, and Jeremy said also, there are front runners that are going to trigger the others. And for this, we believe we need to know more about good practice. We need to share those methodologies that prove that work well, and we need to capitalize both engagement, methodologies, and success. Over to you, Tim.
Christina, thank you. And for people who don't spend their lives following EU policy and where the money goes, it is just worth stopping to think, you know, 1/3 of the money has to go to support green transition. These are vast amounts of money. This is once in a generational strategic investment. And unless tourism is in the plan, and Christina has explained that it really does align with political priorities in terms of the socio-economic benefit tourism can bring, but unless it's in the plan, then the funding won't be available. But that's quite a good segue to Nout, one of whose activities is in part EU funded. So he's got some experience of that, and we will be collaborating with him further as ETOA on a carbon-focused project that's really narrowly aimed at making sure industry understands how to decarbonize and provides help to them. So we'll be working with them on an outreach exercise to try and get to as many businesses as possible and ensure that EU money is actually in practice helping that SME ecosystem transition. So with that thought, Nout, over to you. Actually, before I do that, I'm just going to remind our guests that you can put questions in. Should have mentioned that earlier. So if you wish to make any comments or questions, please do. You should be able to see the function there. Jorge will be keeping an eye on it. Now over to you for the next several minutes. Tell us what Travellife is all about and what you've been up to and what you currently offer. Over to you.
Thank you, Tim. I hope you can see my screen. I'm Nout Kusters. I'm the General Manager of Travellife for tour operators, and there is also, for those who don't know, a Travellife for hotels, which is managed by APTA, and we are two different organizations, but we share the same brand, obviously. Yeah, we are very happy to have agreed a cooperation with ETOA, and it's really also a sign of the breakthrough of sustainability, and specifically then in the tour operator sector. And Tim has asked me to reflect a little bit about the history of sustainability and the travel sector. And if I mean tour operators, I also mean travel agents, so the travel sector at wide. And I can see three periods, which I will describe. And actually, it started around the year 2000, and I call that the innovators or the innovation period. And in that time, you saw that specifically the drivers of sustainability in travel companies were either the stock market companies like TUI, Thomas Cook, and they saw that they really called it like risk management. It was part of the Department of Risk Management. They were probably attacked by certain NGOs, and they wanted to be sure that they were in due diligence with basic standards. And then you had the small dedicated niche companies like Responsible Travel and others. They were very small, but really dedicated to sustainability. And they had ownerships who believed really in this as a new form of development. And you could see that around 2010, on a global perspective, about 100 companies were active in sustainability. And at that time, the Tour Operators Initiative for Sustainable Tourism Development, which was a UNEP-based group of tour operators, they started to discuss jointly what actually the responsibility of a tour operator. So what makes you a sustainable tour operator? Does it mean that all your suppliers, all your hotels have to be certified, that everything has to be perfect in the whole of your supply chain? So there were really methodological questions which were answered in the first 10 years of this decade. And then if you look at this, they really took it from a different perspective. Before that, if you look at a hotel, you have environmental responsibility, you have social issues, you have community issues. But here in a tour operator, they looked from a perspective of management field. So you have your office operation where you really have strong management influence. You can decide how to deal with your staff or how to deal with internal environmental management. So you have a larger responsibility than towards your suppliers. With your suppliers, you need to motivate them to become more sustainable. You need to train them. You need to set basic standards, but you are not responsible for all their actions of the suppliers. And in order to be a sustainable tour operator, not all your suppliers have to be in compliance with all standards which are existing. So that's really a different approach than with a hotel. And of course, customers are important for creating awareness, giving them choices, but also the rights and of the customers themselves. So what are the responsibilities? It should be in your management control. It should not give a competitive disadvantage. Sustainability is beyond legal compliance, so it is something you still need to be a competitive company. So we need to see where can you make a difference without losing your competitive advantage. It should be practically achievable and locally available. And our philosophy in the beginning was if one can do it, all can do it. So we started actually to look at what tour operators are already doing and put that back into a simple checklist and share also the best practices between tour operators so they can learn from each other. We had a whole project based on those early experiences to develop a scheme and a system, a framework specifically for tour operators and for them implementing sustainability. And we had some early organizations who were, this project started back in 2004, and it was funded by an EU Life project. And we had APTA, the British Travel Association, ANVR from the Netherlands, the Tour Operators Initiative, and Leeds University, and UNEP involved. And I'm from the ACIAT, the European Center for Eco and Agro-Tourism. We are a small NGO dedicated to sustainable tourism based in the Netherlands, and we were leading that project. And after 4 years of deliberations, we established Travellife as a system. And LIFE stands for as well the social and the environmental aspects. So the years 2010 to 2020, we can call it as early adapters. So the 100 companies started to grow. Actually, from the year 2010 onwards, actually our membership doubled every year. So it's an exponential growth. And up till COVID, actually, it went really well. We got a little dip in 2020, but now it's taking up again. And you see that some countries are really ahead of others. And it's not that the interesting thing, it's not related to that Europe is advanced of Asia, but we see picking up everywhere, like in the Netherlands, we're really a little bit advanced, but also in Vietnam, Kenya, Nepal, we have like 30, 40 members in those countries. Yeah? In total now in 2020, we had about 1,000 members who joined Travellife, and they're really actually paying members, so they're really committed to work on sustainability. And we have members in 100 countries, and it's picking up everywhere. It's not that one region is more than another or less than another. So what are the lessons learned from those second decade of the century? Is now we really developed a lot of common standards, trainings, tools, and support systems. Because as Tim already explained, we are working with a lot of different types of companies, and we speak about large multinationals to mom and dad companies. And actually, we use the same standards and trainings and tools for those companies. We set up a system which actually works for all types of companies. So yeah, there is a learning platform and a management platform which we offer as Travellife. There is a membership fee, and we gave free access to all the tools in one go to all the staff members. So there is a there's a huge amount of resources are available, and that's of course growing. And this is some trainings. We have a detailed reporting system based on those management fields, and companies can reach a Travellife partner and the certified is in line with the GSTC requirements. This is the online reporting system. It's quite sophisticated. Then we go to the next decade, and what I can see, what's happening now. Yeah, this is the early majority, and that's up to 2030. And I feel really that there is a breakthrough. If I'm going to travel fairs or talk with companies and do cold marketing. Nobody asks why do we have to do sustainability. People say it's not anymore the why, but the when. It's something we have to do. Maybe we'll do it later, but yes, it's on our list. So it's really picking up, and it's really becoming a license to operate. And that's really a difference from 10 years ago. And a good example is the Netherlands, a little bit ahead of the others. We had in 2019 15 active members, and earlier this year we asked all the 200 tour operator members of the Dutch ANVR, are you interested to join our program for sustainability? We have some classes, and 14 new companies joined, and they're really the mainstream companies, those who have no genes in sustainability, but they just believe it's something they have to do. So of course it's a mega trend, and especially under young people, and if you're not working on sustainability, I would say you lose a generation, and not only of clients but also staff. Nowadays young people would like to work with a company which has a dedication sustainability and some sense of responsibility. So yeah, what we expect, maybe from 100 to 1,000 in the second decade. In 2030, we hope to get 10,000 companies globally on board, and then maybe the next decade we get everybody on board, and then you speak about 100,000 companies. But it's an exponential growth, as you can see. So yeah, we also work with travel associations. We recently signed an MOU with ETOA, and we have nowadays 40 committed travel associations, and this is also growing. We see that travel associations do have a role to play in helping their members towards sustainability. Lessons to be learned in the next decade is how to work collectively towards suppliers. Not every tour operator sets its own standards, but tour operators jointly set standards towards the suppliers, and towards no impact travel, and the theme of today, climate neutral, but also plastic waste free travel. So these are challenges which we have to solve in the next 10 years. And as Tim already mentioned, we have a sister program. We have a project which is co-funded by the COSME program of the European Union. And in the frame of this project, we are working on carbon management and reduction, and we have specifically signed an MOU with ETOA about that, how we can work together. And we work with a tool which is called Karmakal, which has been developed by the Dutch travel industry, together with some universities, specifically for tour operators. And we will be able, over the next 2 years, to support 175 tour operators with Travellife, but also with management of their carbon, or with working with their suppliers, or working on a plastic-free supply chain. And this will be an intensive support program. It will be free of charge for the companies, but there is an application process which will be launched at the end of next month. And this is shortly my presentation. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. That is very helpful perspective. Just want to check if Jeremy can hear me, just so as we sort of move to the more discussion part of the debate. So Jeremy, do just give a sign of life. I know the connections have been an issue. But now, Christina, what I've been reflecting on, and we don't yet have any questions from our audience, so that gives me and Jorge a chance to chat a bit, is this
I can hear you, by the way.
You're great. Thank you, Jeremy. So this is a very fragmented industry. It's under stress. Lots of people are still worried about, can I make the salary for next month? Is this something that is going to cost a lot of money, or from the private sector, in order to adapt? I mean, EU financial instruments don't happen from one week to the next. It's a program. People need to apply. There's a process. So, is there anything people can do over the next 3 to 6 months to get planning and get themselves organized? So, Jeremy, do you want to offer any reflections on what short term, if someone is in the position, look, I know I need to do something, I don't have a lot of management time to devote to this, but I need to make a start. Where do you think the Glasgow Declaration and what we've been discussing so far can help people who are in that position?
I think I'd like to say that the Glasgow Declaration and the Tourism Declares framework acknowledges that most of us are concerned, have that exact concern, and it's the repeated question: is this going to cost me a lot of money to become sustainable? Starting by finding out where inside of your organisation are the people, are the teams, are the initiatives that you can build a plan on, because it may well be that people are doing things on sustainability or doing things on efficiency already, and it's not just staring at a wall with a blank sheet of paper and going, what on earth are we doing? There's an awful lot that's potentially there, combined with the fact that this isn't about not being by yourself. This is about saying, I need to be part of a community where there are experts, where there are front runners, where there are people willing to collaborate and share. Tim, from the conversations that you and I have been involved in, and with Christina and with Matt, this is like a never before sense of collaboration that has emerged out of maybe the last 2 years of sitting, talking to one another on Zoom calls. And people are there to share. But then I would also say that it's really important to undercut the concept of this being more expensive, because the cost of inaction is so much more expensive than the cost of action, that we need to understand that to not do this, sure, it means you don't pay any money because you're not doing anything, but the impact on businesses for all manner of reasons, from the carbon prices that will be covering, the greater scales of adaptation, the threats from climate change, the license to operate, etc., not acting should be seen as the cost. Developing a more sustainable business model, can only be the way to go.
I think that's very clear. I'm going to ask now to Christina to reflect on that in a moment, and after that, I'm going to invite Jorge to reflect a little bit from a ETOA perspective as we look for people to work with, and we work with a lot of DMOs in Spain and Portugal as it happens, which is Jorge's direct responsibility. But it's really what is a good role for a trade association. It feels like we're helpful in terms of information transfer and pointing to people who know. And I'm very struck by the language of collaboration we're using. It's an organic network that's developing, but we know very well that for Spain and for Spanish tourism, as well as the regional tourism priorities in Spain, sustainability is very high up the list. This should be an opportunity if we're smart about framing the collaborative projects together, so that between us we get that public-private partnership. So the regions are so good at incubating good practice, supporting innovation and sharing information, but it's really getting those practical tools to the front line that this whole exercise is about. So maybe after Christina and now Jorge, just a couple of words about how we work with destinations and where we see the opportunities for joint action. So Christina, then Nout, and then Jorge, please.
Yes, thanks. For me, the answer could be make use of the available infrastructure that we already have in place. I mean, in every region, you have an EU direct information center. You have national, regional contact points of the different instruments. You have regional innovation agencies, digital innovation hubs. So the infrastructure is ready. So you just need to go and ask, where can I join? What is the good project for me? There are also some money available for startups, for testing new business model. This is already available, so you don't have to wait until the next programs to be operational. There is left money from the previous MFF, which is ongoing into calls for proposals. You not mentioned the LIFE program. LIFE program deals with the environment and climate action instrument. There are open calls for proposals at the moment we speak, dealing with environment protection, biodiversity, climate change, adaptation, and tourism is eligible. So you should have a check and see if it fits within your plan. Don't go for Horizon Europe, and that's I didn't say that officially, but it's too complex. It's too much competition, and tourism is not properly targeted. We are trying it ourselves, so I don't recommend. You should wait if you want to go into a bigger innovation program that is Horizon, and copy what already works. I mean, we've been in Tirol last week. There is a very interesting initiative called CLAR, the Clean Alpine Regions. And this is financed by the former program, Regional Agriculture and Rural Development Fund. And it's very interesting because it connects local farmers, business innovation, entrepreneurs, and tourism accommodation, supply chain, and mobility in a very interesting combination on making a good product because you improve the quality of life of that place. So there are already interesting initiatives that exist. You just go for them.
And I think, actually, I don't know if it's an easy thing to find, Christina, but if you can drop a link about the Tyrol collaboration, it was such an interesting story. And that the fact that there's that political recognition that you do need to get together from the different policy competences to ensure a good result. If there's any links to share on that, that would be super. Thank you. Now, just a minute or two, any reflections on what you've heard?
So yeah, you specifically asked for destinations and how we work together with destinations. So of course we are a system for tour operators who actually work in their own destinations if they're inbound or they are outbound. And at the destination level, we try to be flexible as a scheme. We are not as such dropping our standards from the European level to destinations in any other country, in developing countries or wherever. We allow adaptation of our standards or the interpretation of the standards and criteria to the local situation. So we usually have also workshops either in Spain or in Italy or in Myanmar with local stakeholders to say, hey, this is a global standard. How can we interpret this? How can it work in your country? What does living wage mean? What does sustainable paper mean? Can it be purchased here? So and sometimes there are really local issues which we then incorporate into the standard. So we really add new criteria. So we have this flexibility to work with destinations. And on the certification level, we work very closely with green destinations, which is a GSTC accredited certification scheme, also based in the Netherlands, but also we're very active in specifically many European countries. It's founded by the European Union for Coastal Conservation originally, and that's a scheme we work together with.
Thank you very much. And I've just seen, I'm going to copy the links Christina sent so the audience can see too. I think, Jorge, I'm reflecting, and thank you so much for your patience. You know, we know there's demand and people are looking for new product. There's an appetite for not just the same old. People are looking to diversify away from places which perhaps were fairly crowded in the past. There is an interest in tourism that has a different kind of footprint. There is an interest in product which really plays its part in the community. It's not all going to change overnight, but there is change. And I know the work you've been doing, talking to our city and regional DMOs through Spain and Portugal has provided some insight. So any reflections from you?
Thank you very much, Tim. Yes, indeed. I think DMOs, and this goes again, and it was mentioned at the very beginning, the collaboration between public and private sectors is a fundamental course of collaboration and improvement. And DMOs, you can see that they are being really active in the last 5-6 years and really committed to first what was the Agenda 2030, now looking into 2050. And as now just said, because the climate affects at a very local levels, they are helping local stakeholders, whether it is from cities or smaller villages or coastal areas, to get engaged, attend webinars. And the good news is that, and you know, working with DMOs for the last few years, and Christina can kind of probably agree with what I'm going to say, but the stakeholders, companies, smaller companies, have been the ones aiming for help, aiming for advice, and trying to establish procedures and behaviors that are in favor of a dramatic change that is more needed than ever. So from that point of view, I think that the collaboration between ETOA and the DMOs, we try to help them and be at their disposal whenever it's needed, whether it is organizing small meetings or webinars or informative sessions, and they appreciate that. And also many of our members and even non-members come to us sometimes asking, how can I get more information about this? Then we direct them towards DMOs or other organizations as like NOTS, so that it can all go in the same direction. But as I mean, there is a long way, as Jeremy was saying a while ago, to go, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm really thrilled to see that this collaboration, first the public-private collaboration, and second DMO stakeholders, whether it's local or provincial or regional, is working well and towards our objectives, which are not other than improving the world we live in.
Well, that's a very positive reflection to end on. And I think it is consistent with us as an industry firmly believing that tourism can be a force for good done right. And it needs help to transition. We're in a tough time, but from what I think we've heard, the tools are there. People want to help. If you ask for help, someone will find someone to connect with you to do that. Please share that belief. Please share the Glasgow Declaration. We've got to the end of our 1 hour, so we're going to pause this conversation now, but I'm sure it's the first of many as we explore how collaboration tools and networks will support sectoral shift towards low carbon operation. So thank you very much from all of us at ETOA to Jeremy Smith, to Cristina Nunez, and to NECSTouR, also to Jorge and the team. Thanks for your time. Looking forward to the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.